I've never needed a stabilizer for the subject before.
Okay, not bad. Can we just leave it? That'll be good. All right. So let's talk about civics.
All right.
So, well, first of all, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Tom Honig. I'm a freelance journalist, former editor of the Santa Cruz Sentinel.
Okay, great. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about civics. So, what in your mind separates civics from politics?
Civics is being informed about the process of government, and when I think of civics, I think generally of local government more than national.
Mm-hmm.
In state and national, the politics dominates it so severely that the political parties are in charge, and a lot of times the people who are in office are devoted toward their own reelection and the reelection of their party more than they are into anything else. And I think that's a big difference in locally, where I think by the fact that it's at least on the surface nonpartisan, that and because you're close to the citizenry, that you're thinking more about good government than you are about your own reelection.
Okay. And so, do you think, I mean, first of all, do you think people are aware of this difference or see the two as different?
No, I don't think people are aware of the difference. I think too often, and I think political dialogue is taking the place of good civic dialogue, because sometimes the best action for the civic good is a difficult one to make because it may go against your own personal interests.
Okay, yeah. And what do you think is like the cause for, like, how deep do you think the lack of civics goes, and what do you think is at root?
I think it's easier to have an opinion on things than it is to be truly informed. And I think, that said, the efforts to inform the citizenry are really important. And a lot of time, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Even in some of the most divided votes in Santa Cruz with partisan members of the city council, about 95% of their business are done on unanimous votes. Things like fixing potholes, building curbs and gutters, making sure that water gets to residents, things like that. There's a lot more agreement than disagreement. And and I've been a journalist my whole life, and we tend to look at things in terms of controversy, when in fact a lot of times there is no controversy.
Okay, so like agreeing on potholes doesn't sell papers too well, does it?
No. I mean, the old argument is, airplanes, about 99.999% of airplanes land safely. The only one you cover is the one that doesn't land safely.
Yes, it's true. Okay, and do you think that Santa Cruz is unique in its kind of civic action?
I think Santa Cruz likes to think of itself as unique, but I think it's a lot like any other place.
Okay. Interesting. Do you think our political culture, as opposed to our civic culture, is unique?
No, I think our political culture, I think there's a few favored issues, and I'll use an example of water desal. It was a non-controversial issue until it started up. Most people didn't think about it. It went through a lot of hearings that were sparsely attended, and until it turned into a big political issue and people started pushing some partisan buttons, then all of a sudden people were showing up. But for the first 5 or 6 years of the process, nobody would even show up at the meetings.
And what do why don't people show up to these meetings? If it's their water, if it's their roads, if it's their power, I mean, you think this would be really important to people?
People are busy in their defense, and I think that until it's an intellectual exercise for a long time, and it's easier to get motivated to come out to a meeting when you already are emotionally on one side or the other than it is to just go out and learn about something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, public hearings very often, especially the big ones, turn into a popularity contest where I don't think a single mind is changed by the hearing. I can't imagine what somebody would have to say that would have somebody on the other side jump up all of a sudden and say, I hadn't thought of that, you're right. I've never once seen that in all the public hearings I've ever gone to.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. You know, is there a kind of defined space for civil, or civic, I guess, introspection and reflection on these kinds of problems before public hearings, or? I mean,
I think it's worth the effort. I think it's a frustrating battle. I hate to characterize it as a losing cause,
mm-hmm.
but I think it's worth the effort. I think there are some people that are honestly interested in learning about an issue and making a decision.
Mm-hmm.
But that's harder to do than having an opinion that somebody else has put forward.
Okay. Now, a lot of times, like my background is political theory and that kind of stuff. And we talk about the pillars of democracy in a way, or the pillars of how people see themselves and create identities. And one of those pillars is civil society. And when we talk about civil society, we talk about like the public house or the pub, where people form their opinions or first begin to have these discussions in terms of like, is there water crisis or what's going on with that road or these kinds of things. And people have these kind of informal, weak discussions about these kinds of things. Do you think Santa Cruz has a robust civil society in that sense? Do people talk to each other enough?
I would say that there is not a robust civic society or civil society where opinions are aired. There are a lot of opinions aired,
mm-hmm.
but what I lament is the creation of straw men, where it's not enough to say I disagree with you. You have to point out the opposition's corruption. The water director is an example, since we're talking about water.
Mm-hmm.
The water director has an opinion that desal is necessary. Now, whether that's right or wrong, he's come to that opinion based on a lot of fact. To go to a meeting, you would think he's the most corrupt individual and is somehow on the take from the people. Somehow, that's never been explained why. He's not in line to get any money, but they characterize him as evil or as corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And every political argument, that happens a lot on the national level, and I'm sorry that it's happening here. Sometimes people just have an opinion,
mm-hmm.
and that's okay if you don't agree with it. But in Santa Cruz's dialogue, too often the people are vilifying their opposition. And it happens both ways.
Mm-hmm.
They're out to do evil things and destroy Santa Cruz the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Add to that, in certain elements in Santa Cruz, this fear of any change. Well, change is here whether you like it or not, and passing a law against change is not going to work, is virtually impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people like me who like change, that's a little frustrating sometimes.
Okay. And just kind of end on more of a positive note, I would say, or want to hear from you, is there a way to re-engage the civic space? Is there a way in which we can get more people involved and begin having these discussions and tread away from opinion and more towards pragmatism?
I think it's always an effort, and I went into journalism out of that cause. I felt it was important to do a couple things to explain issues so that people like me could understand them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I discovered when I went into journalism is that sometimes people that I thought I had major disagreements with, once I understood where they were coming from, it was interesting to see how it all made sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a legitimate goal. I think it's a really good goal, and I think it's worth whatever effort we can make.
Mm-hmm.
At one time, I thought journalism was a good way to do that, and with the changes in society and in journalism, it's getting tougher. But I think it's certainly worth the effort. I think that's what Civinomics is trying to do, and I think it's really an interesting idea. And you know, and even in trying to pursue openness and information and knowledge, too often their intentions are questioned, and I think that's too bad.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking time to talk with us. You know,
Always happy to, and I didn't say shit or fuck or anything.
Not until